some people really adapted to what happened with COVID and really made sure that, okay, we've been closed for a few months, but when we open up, we're gonna be open, we're gonna treat the patients that need us. And we're able to just get back in it and make the changes required, whereas other practices didn't. And I think it's quite clear now, there's quite an obvious divide between the ones that have been able to maintain and thrive because of this and the ones that haven't.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Connor from Hive, and today I have Caroline with me from Ware Dental Practice in Ware in Hertfordshire. Caroline is the business manager there, and she's kindly agreed to have a little interview with me and answer some questions about her role and how she got into it. So thank you very much, Caroline, for joining me today.
Thank you for asking me.
So to get us started, I was hoping maybe you could just tell us like a little bit about yourself, how you got into the job that you're in now and the dental industry in general.
Sure. So I actually started working in dentistry straight out of school. So when I was 15, I actually applied for veterinary nurse and dental nurse, and I got the dental nurse job. So that led me down that path. When I was 15, started working as a dental nurse. It was extremely different back then to what it is now when I was working. It was, a whole different ball game. But I worked for about 12 years as a dental nurse. So I started out in sort of general dental practice and then gradually worked my way up. I ended up in a specialist dental practice up in London where we were doing quite sort of complex procedures. And I really, really loved dental nursing, but I think it got to a point where I needed to do a little bit more. It became a bit too routine for me. And so I then thought, right, I'll move maybe into the more administration managerial role. I actually met Simon whilst I was still working as a dental nurse. Simon is the owner of Ware Dental. So I met him. And then a few years past, he bought Ware Dental. He brought me over to this practice where I then became the practice manager here. And I've been here for 14 years. Working here as a practice manager and sort of a business manager in the last few years. My role has shifted slightly. All my working life has been teeth.
Did you find that moving up from kind of like where you started as a dental nurse into the more managerial roles, did that help you kind of like with progression, I guess, to get to where you are?
Yeah, I think I realised actually, excuse me, there was one area I worked as a dental nurse, and then when I was working in the practice in London, it was quite a small practice. So I was doing quite a lot of the behind the scenes running things anyway, but I didn't have much front of house experience in a busy practice. So I actually went and got a job as a receptionist for a year just to kind of fill that gap, because I think to be able to run the business, for me, I wanted to understand as much of the different elements of it as I could. Obviously, my dental nursing knowledge I had a lot of it. But, front of house can be quite a demanding job, and I felt like I really needed that. So, I worked, and I was in an amazing practice, actually, and I learned so much from that. So then by the time I came over to Ware Dental, I had quite a lot of experience behind me. But, still, there was a lot that I had to learn on the job. Looking back to when I first started. Although, to be fair, everything's changed from, when I first started working as a practice manager to what things are now with regards to the regulations and just the way that we have to work. It is completely different. And a lot of it is just learning on the job a lot of the time.
Because, speaking from my point of view, you're probably one of the most successful business managers, I guess, that I've worked with. So I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about kind of when you started at Ware and kind of how you've helped the business kind of move up to where it is now.
Sure. I think looking back, when I first started at Ware, I was very focused on just the day-to-day running of the practice. So I wasn't really thinking big about the practice. I wasn't thinking, what direction are we moving in? How can we, make the business more successful? I was literally like, have I got the staff? Am I doing everything I need to do? I was thinking quite small, really, which, it was my job and that was what I was doing. And then sort of gradually over the years, we wanted to grow as a practice, and I just had to develop my role more to start understanding the way the business run, and just to make the practice more profitable and more successful, really. So my role has definitely completely evolved over the years from what I was first doing to what I do now. They're two entirely different things. And we've had a lot more, like as practice managers, we have a lot more work than what we used to have with regards to compliance and all the different things that we need to do. I mean, we wear a lot of hats in our job, actually. There is a lot to do. But I also have a really good support staff that do help me with a lot of the kind of day-to-day running of things now.
What would you say makes a good business manager? Like you say, I know that business managers, practice managers have a lot of different plates that they're spinning and hats that you have to wear, and you have to get involved in pretty much every aspect of the business, really. Is there anything in particular you would say is like a quality that you found that you've had to really develop to be good in your role, or anything like that?
I think actually one of the main things is, I think obviously understanding that your staff are hugely important to the practice, and without them, really, you have nothing. And I think for me, I've always tried to kind of make myself really relatable to staff, really sort of, it's quite difficult because obviously, you have to be a manager to staff, but when you're in a small business, you are friends with them. And so I've found that sort of having good team members and really working well with them, spending the time to kind of mentor them, guide them, just keeping them in the loop of what we're doing. So then if we're like, oh, we've made this big change, they know why we're doing it and what the reason behind it is. And I think for me, having the right team and keeping the right team is probably one of the most important things, because the rest of it, like it can kind of fall into place. But if you haven't got a good team with you and they don't respect you, then you're never going to really get off the ground. It's never going to work.
Lovely. Very nice. I know I've got similar things like that. I know what you mean with making sure that you've got the people and how you've got to make the line between like being a good manager and then also like being a relatable person that people actually want to work for.
It's funny as well because for some reason, this may be like it in most industries, but practice managers historically have been seen as these real kind of dragon women that just roam around the practice and shout at people. And it's funny actually changing people's perception of what you're doing, what your role is within this practice. I'm not there to shout at you or tell you off. I'm there to kind of help you and give you guidance, and that's my role. And it is quite funny that the majority of people that dental nurses, any kind of administration staff, will always start out with the default that you're there to kind of tell them off, and I think changing that mentality is actually, you have to play quite a long game with that. You have to really sort of be quite consistent with people, and I think it's really important when your team are on board though. It makes all the difference.
And I know from like working with you now for a while that you don't just do that. I think we've been talking about like the nurses and stuff, but I know that you do a lot of mentoring with the actual dentists there as well to kind of help improve their game when they come into the practice.
I do. So I normally have sort of like once a month, we'll just have a meeting, just talk about different things really. So I will maybe look at some of the treatments that they've done, just check that, that they're kind of working to the correct time scale and charging accordingly. So we may have a chat about that, or we would just look at their sort of ADY and see what's going on with that. But sometimes as well, because I think with dentists, it's quite similar to with my role, actually. It can be quite a lonely job. Dentists they've got quite a lot of pressure in their job. They're just squirreled away in their room treating patients, and then they've got all the added administrative work on top that they didn't necessarily used to have. And so sometimes I think it's just nice just to get them in for coffee and, are you okay? Do you need any help? Is there anything, because I think especially being part of a small team, you can pick up sometimes when people need a little bit more support, and not necessarily, you need support with this patient. It might just be a chat kind of thing. And I've found that that is actually really good, and it helps connect me with because otherwise I don't really see them throughout the day. They're sort of coming and doing the work and they're off again. And having regular meetings with my associates is a really, it was a bit weird at first, to be honest with you. And again, their default was like, why is she doing this? Why is she talking to me all the time? But as we've kind of eased into it now, we just have a coffee, a chat, and it's good to stay connected to everyone. I think it really helps.
Yeah, I mean, not least because of everything that has gone on the past 18 months or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's more important than ever, isn't it, to make sure that you've got a network that people can feel comfortable in.
Exactly.
It's interesting that you say that it's kind of quite a lonely role it can feel like at sometimes, because I have heard that before.
Yeah.
I wondered if you could maybe share if there's any way that kind of like Hive or us here have kind of helped you in your role as you've been going along in any way that we could have.
Yeah, of course. It is, like I say, with a business manager, practice manager, it is very lonely, because you don't fall into any of the camps. You're not a dental nurse, you're not a receptionist, you're not a dentist. So and so you are quite isolated in your role, and you don't really have anyone to talk to about your work. So although obviously I have Simon, he's in the surgery all day long doing teeth. In his lunch break, he doesn't really want me like talking. It's a bit. So you can be quite isolated in that sense. And I think one of the biggest things for me with working with you guys was actually just having someone that, if I'm a bit unsure about something, or if I just need sort of a sounding board, to have that made a huge difference to me. And 9 times out of 10, it was probably quite small, insignificant stuff, but sometimes you just need someone that you can talk to about things. And like I say, that for me has been a huge help.
Lovely. Well, I'm glad we could help. What would you say is kind of the biggest challenge that you've faced in your role, either like on a regular basis or to date, if you wanted to, and how did you find that you kind of overcame that?
The biggest challenge, there's two actually. So throughout my whole career as a practice manager, the biggest challenge is probably the complete shift in how dentistry has been. And it is for the better. It's for the better for the patients. It is for the better for all of the team, because the level of compliance that we have now ensures that patients are safe, that my team is safe, that everyone is doing as they should be doing. But for me personally, it increased my workload, an unimaginable amount. So I think just kind of getting on board with the changes and actually understanding why they've been put in place and how they are beneficial, that was a huge challenge for me. But one that I'm sort of thankful for, actually, because I quite like working with kind of guidelines and everything. I quite like that. So it's just getting your head around it, I think. I think another really big challenge is if you ever want to, which we did, want to try and change the culture of a practice, that can be very difficult. I think in dentistry, as I'm sure with other industries, people are quite stuck in their ways. They do things, and people like the status quo, don't they? And so when we first started working with Hive, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and we decided that we were going to make a number of changes, sort of based on their advice and what we thought would be good for the practice. Involved sort of getting the team on board with that is very, very difficult. And again, it's something that you have to spend a lot of, it doesn't happen overnight. And yeah, that was very difficult. And again, the support that I got from you guys with doing that, because a lot of the things, honestly, I wouldn't have dealt with it the way that I did had I not had the advice that I had. And looking back at it now, it was the best thing that we ever done, was kind of changing the culture. But it is difficult. If you start saying to people, we're going to do this, or we're going to, introduce this, whatever it is that you're doing, generally people don't like it. So yeah, I would say that was probably the biggest over the last few years.
Do you think that with everything that's happened recently with the lockdowns and the way that I know we're talking about, I kind of know the process that obviously you guys have been through over the last 5 years to get to where you are now, which the practice is obviously thriving. But across the industry as a whole, I guess, even if people aren't going through a similar like growth trajectory that you guys have done over the past 5 years. I know that there has been kind of, people have had to adapt to a lot of changes in the way that they work, and, you know, patients coming in, what they expect and experience. Do you think that will possibly help with kind of practices, you know, looking to go through a change? Do you think maybe COVID, for everything that's happened, might be a bit of a catalyst to be able to make those changes?
Yeah, I don't know really, because I think from what I understand of dental practice, I think sort of some people really adapted to what happened with COVID and really made sure that, you know, okay, we've been closed for a few months, but when we open up, we're gonna be open, we're gonna treat the patients that need us, and we're able to just get back in it and make the changes required, whereas other practices didn't. And I think it's quite clear now, there's quite an obvious divide between the ones that have been able to maintain and thrive because of this and the ones that haven't. And so, I'd like to think that all practices are open to change and would do things, you know, that are best for them. But honestly, you know, some people just aren't. They're not interested. And
No.
I think people don't like to be told maybe that you're not doing this the right way or you could do it better. And I think if you're not open to advice, really you're missing a trick there, you know, because it was the best thing we ever done. But yeah, I think sometimes it's hard for people to say, oh, maybe we should make changes, maybe we should do this. And I think people should, but people don't always, do they?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's why, maybe in a way, that's why it's worked so well for you guys, because like you said, you've been open to kind of advice and making a change. And like you say, the dental industry has changed massively so quickly.
Yeah.
So being able to just like have that ability to be flexible and agile and adapt as, you know, consumers' attitudes and moods change is why you guys are where you are today, I suppose, and have been able to make the most of it.
I think we were quite lucky when the practice was closed as well, because we used that time. I used that time to really think, you know, I wasn't like, oh, cool, I get 3 months holiday. I was just like, right, what am I going to do when the practice reopens? Like, how are we going to make this work? Obviously, so many things have changed. We could only open to, say, 50% capacity. And, you know, all of these things, my staff were on furlough and, you know, all the same drama that everyone else had. But I think using that time and putting as many changes in place as we could before we opened was the best thing that we could have done. And actually, what was so helpful was that I really felt like you guys, don't get me wrong, like over the years, you've always been supportive, and if I've needed you, whatever, I can call you up. But actually, from when the practice closed, you guys really swung into action. It was like, right, let's get on Zoom calls, and I think to have, you know, in such uncertain times, to basically have someone, you know, almost holding your hand, being like, it's going to be okay. We're going to, you know, like, we will make this one. Yeah. And that actually was invaluable for me at that time. Like I say, when I didn't know when the practice would reopen, if we were going to, you know, go bust, like, you don't know. Yeah. So, it was unbelievably helpful.
Oh, lovely. So what advice would you give to someone who's maybe, I'm not sure, either a practice manager or a dental nurse looking to kind of go up into a business manager role, or someone just looking to kind of start in that career? What would be your advice to someone in that position?
Oh my gosh, what wisdom can I share?
Difficult question.
Honestly, I mean, I think it is a harder role than you think it would be, and I think you definitely have to be able to relate to a lot of different type of people. So I think if, you know, because you're dealing with so many different personality types, you know, especially the dentists, and they're very kind of sciencey brain types, and you know, so you've got so many different type of people. And I think just being aware that doing my job is not just me sitting in an office typing up numbers and that kind of thing. There's so many different elements to it. I think it's a very rewarding job. And I have to say, like, it really, when I have patients feedback and that kind of thing and saying, oh, I've had such a good visit, especially really nervous ones, that is so rewarding for me. And I think just having a good team and to be able to get that kind of network is really rewarding, but you do have to put in the work. It's not just a 9-to-5 job, like it's not, but it is a very good job. And I mean, I went from being a dental nurse to a practice manager. I think you definitely have to be honest with yourself. If there's gaps in your knowledge, you need to fill them before you try and take on the role, because if you take on a role like this, you need to know your stuff. You can't just wing it. Well, I mean, I sort of did, but you can't wing it anymore.
Until you make it, yeah.
But I think, I love my job. Like, I genuinely do as well. I love coming to work, and I don't ever think, oh God, I wish I'd just done something else, because it's a great job, but it's difficult. But I mean, I would advise people to go for it.
Excellent, good. That's what we like. A challenge.
Yeah.